Blog Talk Radio.
It is that time again. It is House Talk pregame with Dr. Lauren Pitts and my amazing co-host, Jay Money. Jared Johnston, y'all. Ronnie is not with us today because he is graduating with his master's degree today. So major congrats to Ronnie Ransom and his wife, the awesome and wonderful Mrs. Ransom. We want to send him much love. We'll miss him. He'll be back with us next week. And as always, my man-child, Andre Garlick. Hopefully he will be able to join us during basketball season. Right now he's getting his grind on in Atlanta selling cars. I'm going to give you that information so you can check him out later. But look, folks, we're excited because we have a powerful show for you today. As always, me and Jared are going to hold it down. We're hoping that you're going to call into the show. You're going to share some information on chat. You're going to ask us some questions, give us some comments. But what we want you all to know is that House Talk pregame is all about family. It's about showing much love to our HBCU family, to student and professional athletes and their families, and really to the Black and brown family all over this nation and for real all over the world. For those of you that know me intimately, family is everything to me, and House Talk pregame is everything to me. And I thought, what better way to unify and to create this unique marriage is to just bring it all together. But that's not all. We're all, just really, really, really excited because we have also joined the Heritage Sports Network family. So we're on there now. Actually, we are growing and we are reaching thousands, hundreds of thousands of people all across the nation and all around the world because we're on Blog Talk Radio, we're on Facebook Live, we're on Heritage Sports Radio Network. So really excited about joining that family. We have 2 spots on HSRN. We are on there now at 11 o'clock, but we're also on again at 10 o'clock at night on Saturdays. So if you missed the show live, you can certainly check us out for the rebroadcast. But it's all about family. Jared?
Yeah, speaking of family, we like to, think of ourselves as family. Myself, Dr. Lauren Pitts, Ronnie. So definitely congratulations to him, fellow CIAA companion. Big shout out to him and his family. And for all you guys that are familiar with House Talk, we're revamped now with House Talk pregame. And we're giving you guys real knowledge. We're being transparent. We're giving you guys answers to the current times that we're in, from everything that's happening in the HBCU landscape, even politics, anything that's relatable to us as people and affects us on a daily basis. We're talking about it. We're giving you guys answers, solutions to things that you may be going through in the times that we're experiencing now, with the raw times we're experiencing now. And we're just here to give you guys an outlet, as it's an outlet for us as well, and also to have fun. And like I said, be transparent. That's the main thing. We know some of you guys may be tired of what's going on. We know that you guys care for change and are looking for change, and it's time to optimize. Also, while we are doing the show, feel free to call in. We're taking call-in questions and comments. You can simply dial direct at 515-605-9744 or email your HBCU shout-outs, questions, or comments to httpregame@gmail.com. Back to you, Dr. Pitts.
Yeah, so excuse me if you see me turning my head and multitasking here because I've got multiple devices so that I can monitor the switchboard if anybody calls in live with a comment or question, but we're also monitoring the chat window. So if you want to put information or comments or questions or anything like that in the chat window, we can keep an eye on that too. So just didn't want y'all to think that I'm distracted. It's not like that. So one of the things that we do every week, and it's really in response to the stigma that goes on in Black and brown communities surrounding mental health. For those of you who listen in regularly, you know that I'm a couple marriage and family therapist. Ronnie is a mental health counselor. And the mental health, the mental wellness of our people is very, very important to us. And it's actually a major tenet for us here at Pregame. So one of the things that we like to do every week is we like to give you a diagnosis of the week. And really, what that is that us sharing some pertinent knowledge for you on mental health conditions. We give you some background on it, give you some overview, signs and symptoms that you may want to keep a lookout for, and some treatment ideas. And then a really important thing is we give you some resources that can help you to address it if you feel like this is something that you or a loved one might be dealing with. So our diagnosis of the week this week is bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder, formerly called manic depressive illness or manic depression, is a mental disorder that causes unusual shifts in mood, energy, activity levels, concentration, and that really do influence your ability to carry out day-to-day tasks. There are 3 different kinds of bipolar disorder, but all 3 types involve clear changes in mood, energy, and activity levels. These moods range from periods of extremely up, elated, or irritable and energized behavior known as a manic episode, or very down, sad, indifferent, or hopeless periods known as depressive episodes. Less severe manic periods are known as hypomanic episodes. Now, there's some key things that I want to make you aware of where bipolar disorder is concerned. Sometimes a person might experience symptoms of bipolar disorder that don't match these 3 categories, and they're referred to as other specified and unspecified bipolar and related disorders. It's important to note that bipolar disorder is typically diagnosed during adolescence, which is your teen years, and early adulthood. And one of the things that I like to point out to people, too, that it's very important to note is that oftentimes those diagnoses may present themselves in smaller children with diagnoses such as disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, conduct disorder, intermittent explosive disorder. And we see some comparable symptoms in some of those episodes that in some of those instances in smaller children that have to be monitored very, very closely, because if they are not, what we do learn is that those symptoms can become more severe. And as that child progresses into adolescence and into early adulthood, we can find those symptoms becoming more severe and manifesting itself in the form of bipolar disorder. So some signs and symptoms that I want to bring to your attention. There's usually intense emotion involved with those that are suffering from bipolar disorder. Changes in sleep patterns and activity levels. Uncharacteristic behaviors, often without recognizing their likely harm or undesirable effects. What we call distinct periods of mood episodes. And those mood episodes are very different from the moods and behaviors that are typical for the person. The symptoms may last every day for most of the day, and they may also last for longer periods and really be present for several days or weeks at a time. Sometimes people experience both manic and depressive symptoms in the same episode, if you can imagine. Jared, if you can imagine what that looks like. And when I think about people that I've encountered personally or professionally throughout the course of my life, and then once I got my formal education and training as a mental health practitioner, it's like OMG on all the levels. Well, that explains a whole lot. So what I've found, particularly in our communities, Jay, is that we see these behaviors, we see these symptoms, and we attribute it to stuff that has nothing to do with mental health, when in actuality, the person has a mental health condition. Oh, she just wilding out. Oh, she got anger management issues.
Yeah, it's like,
she a hothead. Like, she just moody. She must be on her period. We've heard it all, right?
Yeah, it's like
when in actuality, in actuality, there's a more deeper issue that's going on that is coming into play that we need to be mindful of.
I had a question about the body.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, you can just go to a doctor and what kind of test is it if you know that they give you to diagnose you with bipolar disorder?
So we have different types of assessments that we use. There is no one specific assessment that can be used because we're going to be looking at the length of time that some of these symptoms have been present, that we have to rule out that it might be something else. We have to take into consideration whether or not there's a co-occurring issue. And what I mean by co-occurring is, does the person have a substance abuse or use issue that's going on that could exacerbate some of the symptoms that you see? The other thing that we have to take into consideration is the presence of trauma. Is there present trauma going on? Is there been a history of trauma going on? We've talked lengthy in other House Talk episodes before we sort of revamped and became House Talk Pregame. We talked a lot about adverse childhood experiences and what that looks like in Black and brown communities, right? So there's a lot that we have to assess. So using one instrument may or may not be effective. I know that I use different ones dependent upon everything that's presented to me when I'm conducting the intake session, because I need to be able to sort of weed through some of the other things that may be going on. So the long-winded answer to your question is there's a number of different assessments that we can use. There's sometimes we're taking notes, sometimes they're written, sometimes they're self-assessments, meaning that we issue the self-assessment to the patient that's coming to us for services, and then we have them fill out the form. But then what we do is we review that form with them and create this space to have dialogue around some of the things that they put in there so that we can get a better understanding.
I have another question. I mean, it might related, but what when it comes to a relationship, like emotionally, sometimes you see often guys to their spouse, like their girlfriend, sometimes you're there emotionally, then it's like the hour later you're like, I don't want to be bothered right now. I've seen that, I've heard it from friends and things like that. Would you say that's some form of bipolar, like hidden, or that's just common?
So I can't. In all fairness, I can't answer that, and the reason why is because it's an all things considered assessment, right? Like I can't clinically, to be responsible, I can't say, oh, well, she's moody, because there's so much other stuff that could come into that, right? So are there issues? Are there trust issues in the relationship? Does he have issues that are, are they triggering each other? Are there stressors in place? Oh, it's complex. I say all that to say that it's a very, very complex analysis to make. And in order to be able to do that effectively, we as mental health practitioners really need to have in-depth discussion. And what we do, just to shed some additional light on that for you, Jay, and for our listeners and our viewers, is that in any mental health condition, we have to look at things through an ecological perspective. And what I mean by that is I do an ecological systems analysis, right? So I look, for example, at who's in the household. What else might be going on in the household? I look at things such as what we call a CNIP, a core negative interaction pattern. How are people in the house triggering each other, stressing each other? What are the relationship dynamics? What are the different interactions that are going on in this family dynamic that may be influencing the onset of some of these symptoms that we're seeing? And based upon what answers are yielded by that exploration, that's how I'm able to weed out and to make the determination whether or not it may be bipolar disorder or something else going on. Also keep in mind, viewers and listeners, is that there's a criteria, right? There's a criteria that our diagnostic and statistical manual says that we must use as a guide to be able to make these diagnoses. So these behaviors, these presenting symptoms would need to be present for certain windows of time, and it's going to vary contingent upon what the presenting diagnosis might be. So when you get particularly into diagnoses of bipolar disorder, treatment can help with bipolar disorder so that the individuals that have that formal diagnosis are able to lead healthy and active lives. I think that it's also important to note there are some risk factors, and I just sort of touched on them vaguely. Some of those risk factors are first noting that there is no single cause. Research has shown us that it's not like we can't say, oh, bipolar disorder is caused because of a traumatic brain injury. Oh, bipolar disorder is caused because of genetics. What research has shown us is that there could be any number of reasons why a person has that particular mental health issue. There's many factors that contribute to a person's chances of having this illness. There are treatment and therapies that I want to bring to your attention, including medication, psychotherapy, and psychotherapy is talk therapy. That's where you connect with a therapist like me, a couple marriage and family therapist, or a mental health counselor, or a licensed clinical social worker, or someone that has credentials in behavioral and mental health to be able to assist. I also think that it's important to point out, because I recognize that everybody, for valid reasons, is not into talk therapy. They're not into taking medication. So treatments beyond things that you can do beyond traditional treatments would be regular exercise, keeping a life chart.
A life chart?
No, a life chart. A life chart is where you document you document what's going on in your. It's like a form of journaling, right? Where you're documenting what's going on in your life. You're keeping a daily record of your mood symptoms, sleep patterns, life events, things of that nature that can sort of help us to hone in on what might be going on that's exacerbating the presence of these symptoms in your life. I do want to say that if anything that I've described is making you question whether or not you or someone that you love and care about is suffering from bipolar disorder, I do not want you to self-diagnose. I cannot stress that enough. It is absolutely imperative that you see a doctor, whether it be your family doctor who can refer you to a mental health practitioner so that you can get an appropriate assessment done. Do not self-diagnose. Do not diagnose anyone else if you do not have the appropriate education, training, and credentials to do so. That could be very, very dangerous. Know that you can call me directly at 833-574-8878. Again, that's 833-574-8878. You can also reach me through my website at drlaurendpitts.com. You can reach me through the talkspace.com clinical network. You can reach me through the therapytribe.com clinical network. And you can reach me through the therapyincolor.org clinical networks. All of those clinical networks I am affiliated with, and my clinical services can be retained through any one of those platforms. You can also call the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration Treatment Referral Helpline at 1-800-662-4357. Again, that's 1-800-662-4357. You can also call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. What we want to emphasize here, folks, is that mental illness is not something that we want you to make light of. We understand that there is a stigma associated with mental illness. We also know that we cannot appropriately address what we are unwilling to acknowledge. It is imperative to get help so that you can get better, because I can tell you from personal and professional experience, mental illness has a domino effect that adversely impacts everyone in the household, in the community, and on a far greater level depending on the nature and severity of the mental illness. Please, please, please do not ignore these symptoms. Do not make assumptions. It is better to be assessed and find out for sure and get the appropriate help than to sweep it under the rug, make light, and act like it's a joke or that it's not happening. That can prove dangerous, and I can tell you from personal and professional experience, it can end in grave tragedy, and we do not want that to happen for any of you. Jared?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. Do you hear me echoing?
You're not echoing.
Okay, cool. But yeah, I think it also looks to a lot of football players. I know the movie Concussion. They talked about a lot of former NFL players or anyone who had, multiple head trauma, concussions. They often say that falls back into bipolar disorder in their post-athletic careers, which leads to so much other things like that. So I definitely can see that sometimes, maybe in teammates in college. Some guys kind of act a little outlandish at times, and you think, you wonder, is it because of the head trauma, or maybe, like you said, past experiences, growing up, then was terrible. So I think it is definitely something that is definitely serious. And moving on from that, we always shout out our HBCUs because we love HBCUs, of course. Bowie State alum myself, so I'm very, very, very proud of my alum and looking at all the great things we're doing. For the first school I'm going to shout out is the University of the Virgin Islands. And I got a lot of information because when I was doing my research on it, I honestly was impressed. And I never knew they had all this going on, and it kind of made me want to see firsthand what is the school like, or like if I went to that school, how would it be, let alone just a different environment, being in that area, outside the 50 states here. But the University of Virgin Islands was founded as a college of the Virgin Islands in 1962, and in 1986 it officially became a public HBCU and changed its name to the University of the Virgin Islands to reflect its growth and diversification of its academic curriculum and regional community services. The university has 2 campuses, and they also have 2 extension facilities. The majority of the buildings on St. Thomas are made of volcanic rock and cement because in the Virgin Islands they have a lot of hurricanes. So they want to make sure that, school and the infrastructure stays up to support its students. St. Thomas campus boasts 64,000 square foot sport and fitness center, which includes a golf course, swimming pool, volleyball, basketball, and tennis courts, and baseball and soccer fields. So they definitely, it seems like they have facilities at that university. The legislature of the Virgin Islands chartered the University of the Virgin Islands Research and Technology Park to help expand the technology segment of the island's economy, encourage more businesses to operate on the islands, and faster technology research and activities at the university. The university is filled with knowledgeable staff to help guide and support students in reaching their goals. They have a Department of Agriculture, which operates a large agricultural experiment station on the St. Croix, I think it's the St. Croix campus, working on agroforestry, aquaponics, biotechnology, forage agronomy, and tilapia farming. So a lot of words I never heard of, but it sounds like they're doing their thing out there. The university also owns and runs the Etzelman Observatory. So they have a lot of things going on top of the line technology. They have 5 academic divisions: business, education, humanities, and social sciences, nursing and science, and mathematics. University of Virgin Islands also offers various graduate degree and undergraduate degree programs. They have several programs under its College of Science and Mathematics. One of these is the engineering program, where students actually attend UVI for the first 3 years, and then they transfer to either Columbia University, the University of Florida, Washington University in St. Louis, or the University of South Carolina in Columbia to complete the last 2 years of their engineering studies. Nice. After completing the program, students acquire a Bachelor of Science in Applied Mathematics from UVI and a Bachelor of Science in the specialization of engineering from the partner university that they go to. And then they also have a marine biology program there. They compete in the NAIA. No, they compete in the Inter-University Athletic League, the LAI, and the National Association of Intercollegiate Activities, which is the NAIA. And they also compete in the Caribbean University Sports Association. They have sports for men and women: basketball, soccer, tennis, volleyball, track and field, cross country, swimming, and table tennis. So they have a lot of stuff going on at University of Islands, which I was definitely surprised by. I didn't know that, it was that much. And then the other one is Rush College. Rush College is one of the oldest colleges for African Americans in the United States. It was founded on November 24th, 1866 by Northern missionaries with a group called the Freedmen's Aid Society. Some of you guys may have heard that in school in history or African American class. And they were of the Methodist Episcopal Church. Sorry, I can't words again, tongue-tied. In 1870, the college was actually chartered as Shaw University. And I know a lot of you guys are familiar with Shaw University in North Carolina. And honoring the Reverend S.O. Shaw, who made a gift of $10,000 to the institution, which, adjusted for inflation, is equivalent to approximately $200,000 today. So he gave that amount back in 1870. In 1892, to avoid confusion with Shaw University in Raleigh, North Carolina, the institution changed its name to Rush University, a tribute to Reverend Richard S. Rust of Cincinnati, Ohio. He was a preacher, abolitionist, and the secretary of the Freedmen's Aid Society, and as we mentioned, helped fund the college. Rust College maintains 5 divisions of departments of study: Division of Education, Division of Humanities, Division of Science and Mathematics, Division of Social Sciences, and the Division of Business. Degree programs are offered in 16 areas of study at the school. They're a member of the NAIA Athletic Association, and they formerly competed in the NCAA Division III level. Men's sports include baseball, basketball, cross country, tennis, track and field, and volleyball. So they have men's volleyball if anyone's interested. Women's sports includes basketball, cross country, softball, tennis, track, and also volleyball for the women. And then for notable alumni, Lucy Campbell is a composer, hymn writer. Ruby Elzy, she's an operatic soprano. Perry Wilburn Howard, attorney, assistant U.S. Attorney General, Mississippi Republican chairman, Leslie B. McLemore, civil rights activist, interim mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, and they also have Godwin Maduka, MD, and founder of Las Vegas Pain Institute, a medical center. So a school I've never heard of, but, they're clearly doing big things. And, again, as every HBCU is, pushing out and producing, top-tier African-Americans in society.
Nice. I tell you, week in and week out, it's like we're learning this history. And as we're researching, we're learning more, too. So it's like, we're doing big things. My shout-outs this week are Delaware State University in Dover, Delaware. The Delaware College for Colored Students, now known as Delaware State University in Dover, was established May 15th, 1891 by the Delaware General Assembly under the provisions of the Morrill Act of 1890. And I explained that either last week or the week before on what that is, by which land-grant colleges for blacks came into existence in states maintaining separate educational facilities for people of color. DSU Athletics offers 18 NCAA Division I sports, a combination of women's and men's sports. They pride themselves on their student athletes being extraordinary. They compete in the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, which is the MEAC, consisting of 13 historically black colleges and universities, i.e. HBCUs, in the southeastern and the mid-Atlantic United States. There was an interesting slogan on there, or I think it's more like a mantra. It says, "We have empowered our students to turn their dreams into reality for over 125 years as one of the nation's premier historically black colleges and universities." I thought that was really cool. They also refer to themselves as having a proud legacy and a promising future. Our current population includes 63% African American enrollment and an increasing number of Caucasian, Hispanic, Asian, and other international students. And that goes back to a point that you made a couple of shows ago, Jared, when we were talking about the myth and the misconception that so many people of color have, and what really has become a stigma to some people about HBCUs is that, they don't want to go to school with a bunch of black people. And what we explained is that not only is there this amazing diversity amongst us as black and brown persons nationally and internationally, but HBCUs also provide extraordinary educations to people from international backgrounds from all over the world. And those internationally diverse populations on campuses are growing by leaps and bounds as well. Notable alumni from DSU. They have kicked out 18 NFL players over the years. And I want to give a special shout out to a gentleman by the name of Rod Milstead, who was drafted, to my team, the Dallas Cowboys, in the 5th round, 121st overall of the 1992 NFL draft. The other reason why I want to give Rod his props, and I haven't seen him or talked to him in many years, but because he was a very, very good friend of my former and now deceased husband. He and Craig played on the same team for DSU. They were extraordinary teammates. They were great friends. And everything that I remember, because everybody called him Milstead, everything that I remember about Rod, he was just a great guy. And Jay, he's from your neck of the woods. He's from D.C., born and raised. So I'm not sure if Milstead's listening, but I just wanted to love on him a little bit. Like I said, he was a tremendous, tremendous friend to my former husband and an extraordinary teammate. And watching him light it up, the years that I got to see him play at Del State was a beautiful thing. And then he came to the Cowboys. So it's like, hey. So excited about that. The other school that I want to shout out is Morehouse College. And, everybody, Morehouse, man, everybody knows about Morehouse. But I'm going to shout them out anyway. Morehouse is a private, historically black college for men in Atlanta, Georgia, opened in 1867 to train former slaves to be professional ministers and educators. Morehouse College is considered an HBCU with emphasis in liberal arts, and they are anchored by the main campus on 61 acres that's near downtown Atlanta. They have a variety of residential dorms and academic buildings. Just an extraordinary school. Know a number of people, myself personally, that have graduated from Morehouse, and all of them will tell you they received an extraordinary education. They are tried and true to educating Black men, and the university attracts well-known achievers in politics and the arts to speak at college events. Morehouse is ranked 9th in the initial NCAA Division II South Regional rankings for sports. They have varsity teams in baseball, basketball, cross country, football, golf, tennis, and track and field. The notable alum, this list could go on forever. Further proof to what you've already been saying about no HBCU should ever be more. Notable athletes, Edwin C. Moses, Olympian, 2 gold medals and 1 bronze. Don Clendenon, World Series MVP. Raymond Harewood, Super Bowl champion. Harold Ellis, NBA. Isaac Keys, NFL. John David Washington, NFL. Andre Nelson, NBA. Darius Williams, NBA. Tyrese Walker, NBA. And the one and only Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., actor Samuel L. Jackson, John David Washington, Killer Mike, Martin Luther King the Third. Morehouse doing that thing.
Yeah, that's a whole lot. All those schools, Morehouse, Selman, Clark Atlanta, like those are very known schools. Anytime you say that, that's always, on the top of people's list. But all HBCUs, as you guys, we list them off, all of them have, great attributes about them, great alums. Mm-hmm. We're seeing it more, today coming out at with positions of power, men and women. Definitely a great. In today's show, we always give you guys great shows. We do our best to, be transparent and be truthful. And today we're talking about the real world employment experience. Mm-hmm. And focus towards our athletes, whatever sport you play, male or female. There's going to come a time, like we've hit on before, and we emphasize that you're going to have to step away from the game. And those accustomed to the daily grind of waking up, being in the cafeteria at a certain time, being at practice on time, dressing a certain way, having respect in certain venues that you go to as a team, whether it's press conferences, media days. Sometimes it's still a little bit different once you transition and you're now in the professional world where you're an employee and working yourself up the ranks to maybe become more than an employee or a CEO, things like that. You have to transition properly. And for some guys or some females, you may initially struggle, but we want to dive into what makes a good employee. Are athletes actually the best employees? Are they more primed for that position because of what we've been throughout all of our years? Do employers want scholar athletes? Are scholar athletes at the top of the totem pole when they're searching for new employees? And we're going to get into what's a success formula, what's some things that, you guys can see your life today or in years down the line when you go and you're going on job interviews, you're filling out resumes, you're trying to start a business or anything like that. How can you put yourself in the best position? And I'm just going to give a little bit of a background for people who may have not heard before or are new to the show. But right now I'm currently in the real estate field in the DMV, residential real estate. So if anyone is looking for a home, buying or selling, definitely contact me. But I also authored a book, self-published a book from Cleesa Loafers, which talks on this topic as well throughout the book as far as transitioning after the game, dealing with certain mental issues, like Dr. Pitts and Ronnie talk about every week. Some of those mental issues can come up, post-athletics, and they may have been there throughout your whole life, but now that you have that safety net gone, and that place of peace that you went to, now they come to the light and they can cause destruction and things like that in some situations. But for me, I got into the professional realm. I didn't walk into it. I was working at a dog kennel after I graduated, which, if you go to school and you have a degree, I graduated with criminal justice. That's not something that I envisioned myself doing. I worked there for over a year, and, I didn't know what I wanted to do professionally outside of the sporting field and things like that. So it was a rough transition. And then I was working in the State Department with a government job. And, from there I got into real estate and writing and things like that. But I think it's such a pivotal point in our lives. The thing that when I reflect on it is everything that I've learned in football and went through, it's been able to help me in my professional life. It's been able to supersede expectations for myself and others because I have 15 plus years of experience, but it was just in a different light. So I think that this is just definitely going to be a great topic for you guys to listen to or share or listen to later. And what's your take on it, Dr. Pitts? I know you're definitely a professional woman, more professional than I've seen. And from your perspective, as a mother of a former athlete, and what do you think about this topic as well?
So I'm gonna offer a couple of different perspectives. I'm going to offer the perspective certainly as a mom and the way that Andre's father and I thought it important to groom him and to nurture him and prepare him for real world employment experience. But if I may, I want to also address it from a mental health perspective and also through the lens of someone that has served in managerial capacity my entire career. So being responsible for sourcing and screening and hiring those individuals that were going to be a part of my respective teams. First and foremost, I want to tackle it from the perspective of a mom. And the reason why is because what I realized as a general manager, as a director, as a trainer, right, is that I believe that the initial ethics and morals and values and professionalism that one comes to me for an interview for, I believe that those foundational principles start at home. I believe that they start in the home. And who do children model their behavior after? They model their behavior after their parents, after those that are most influential in their life, their parents, their grandparents, the auntie, the uncle, their pastor, their Sunday school teacher, whomever those adults are that are demonstrating for this child what appropriate conduct should look like in the employment sector. So where Andre is concerned, he knew beyond the shadow of a doubt that anything that resembled unprofessional conduct was not going to be tolerated because of what those types of behaviors weren't tolerated in the home. So you not only treat your parents with decency and respect, but you treat all people with decency and respect. And two wrongs don't make a right. So if a customer, for example, is screaming and yelling and hooping and hollering and cussing and fussing in your face, that doesn't give you a right to respond in kind. He was taught the importance of always going high when others go low. Now, you all know Dr. Pitts can get off. I can get down with the get down and get stupid with the rest of them. But guess what, folks? I'm not going to compromise my career, my livelihood for someone else's ignorance. I'm just not going to do that. So it was imperative for us to make sure that Andre understood, first and foremost, what professionalism is, what that looks like. And I'm going to be transparent. There have been a couple of occasions where I said to him, based upon things that were going on in the work environment, you don't have to tolerate that. I don't want you to to respond to that level of ignorance and unprofessionalism, I want you to leave. Because I think that, and I'm not telling folks that the answer is always to throw in the towel and to walk away. But what I will tell you, and this is something that I'm very, very passionate about, is that particularly when we're dealing with certain people, certain people think that they have a license to talk to you any kind of way, to treat you any kind of way, and to handle you any kind of way. That is so unacceptable on every level, and I just don't tolerate it. Now, how I may handle a situation as someone that is educated and trained, and I've been at this a bit longer, may be different than how a young person might handle it. But my encouragement to you, listeners and viewers, is don't allow anyone to pull you off of your square. You have to think about the other person's behavior within the context of, if you are constantly reactive, in essence, you are handling your power and your control over to that person. And you're not a puppet. You're not. You're not a puppet. So no one has the right to exude that type of power and control over you. As a leader in the corporate sector, as someone who sources and screens and hires individuals, I would say that people need to become intimately acquainted, Jared, with what polished, dignified, and refined means. How you communicate with your friends is not how you should communicate when you're coming for an interview. How you dress when you're going to the club is not how you should show up for a job interview or for work.
I just hit on that point. Sorry to cut you off, but you see it a lot of times. I mean, I've seen a lot of teammates, and it's, you go to a job interview or if they go to an internship towards the end of their 4 years, and I mean, sometimes, you know, some people maybe you're not going to have a suit. I mean, college students, you might not have a suit to wear. I mean, that's a given. But you can still dress up. You can still clean up a little bit, have a shape up, and be as clean as possible. I mean, some guys go there and it looks like they don't want the job. And then
look like they just rolled out of bed.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing you have to think about is that may have worked in football. You could roll out the bed, throw your football warm-up on, go to class, you have practice. You succeeded that day. You did what you were supposed to do, but you're now being looked at in a different perspective. Like these employers, some of them don't care that you play football or basketball or track, volleyball. No, none of them care. It's what can you do for me now? Unless they were a huge fan of your college, it may not have any relevance. And you're going in there, and sometimes African-American, male or female, a lot of times you're going in there and there is someone from another race on the other side, a lot of times Caucasian, whatever it is, and you have to impress them. You know, your first impression is the thing. And if you go there looking like you don't care, then they're going to look crazy. They have 10 other people coming in that day who are going to have a tie, whatever it is. They're going to look presentable. I think that's one of the main things. As athletes, you come from a place where your presentation was on the football field. Your uniform is what people recognize you in. You're walking around campus in warm-ups and sweatpants and joggers, things like that. And once you step out of it, it's a whole different realm. I mean, some guys, you have to learn how to tie a tie. You know, a lot of teams do not know how to tie a tie. They don't know how their collar should be, what collar ways to keep your collar down, how to iron the shirt, how to take clothes to the cleaners and look professional. It's the little things. And I think a lot of times coaches should be kind of stepping up to the forefront and teaching these life skills on the way, because I may have seen in high school, my high school coach, you know, we dress up on Fridays for games. They may have, you know, hey, you got to fix your collar, things like that, but there was nothing formed like a class on, how you should present yourselves and
social graces.
Yeah,
it's called social graces.
Yeah, I think that'll help a lot. I mean, sometimes people wearing dress pants and they still sagging their dress pants. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, come on. You know what I'm saying? What kind of job are you trying to get or career are you trying to get into? And like you said, it starts at the home, but as it progresses and, these athletes get on the college campus, one thing they preach is family. And I think that should be at the forefront, etiquette, all of those things, definitely need to be number one.
Dining etiquette and social graces. I used to do a lot of training in both of those areas because what I found is that not only are individuals coming to interviews with the inappropriate foundation in social graces, but they're also coming to interviews with inappropriate dining etiquette. So if you are being interviewed over a meal, which often happens, you are now between a rock and a hard place because you do not know how to conduct yourself in a more formal dining setting that perhaps will require more of you than what you learned at home. And I think that goes to, in some cases, certainly we know that it's not all, it goes to there being so many behaviors that are required to be successful in the corporate arena that just simply are not taught in some of our homes and in some of our communities because those behaviors are attributed to acting white. Life is beyond blessing your food. There's more to dining etiquette and social graces than blessing your food if you're someone that even blesses your food, because I know folks that don't bless their food. They just dive in. And that's fine. If that's what you choose to do, that it's not, your religious beliefs are your religious beliefs or not. That's not, my business or my concern. But one must know how to conduct themselves in a variety of settings. And if you're not getting that foundational knowledge in your home, then we have a problem. We have a problem because what ends up happening is a situation, and I'm not going to say the school, but I was actually conducting interviews at an HBCU some years ago, and I said to my colleagues and my boss at the time, I was just blown. I was blown at what was walking through the door. And the majority of the candidates, 99.9% of the candidates that were coming through the door were Black and brown persons. And what I said to my boss is, I said, you all are going to think I'm crazy for what I'm about to say. I said, but we can't move forward with these interviews. We can't. I said, if you will allow me to make what I considered a public service announcement at the time, because I was just mortified. I was mortified, I was embarrassed, and I was humiliating for our people, because if you're walking into a setting where the assumption is that you're going to be around so many of our own people, what might you walk into an environment where the dominant culture, people don't just switch up. Oh, I'm going to interview where I think Black people are interviewing me, so let me just be whatever. Oh, I'm going into an interview with the white man, so let me spruce up. No. How you show up for us is how you show up for them. So I did. I was permitted to make a public service announcement. And what I said was, this is not intended to disrespect anyone or to belittle, degrade, or demean. But how you are showing up, how you are dressed, how your hair is combed, how you are speaking at a volume that we can hear a number of inappropriate conversations in this room while you're waiting to be called is so acceptable on so many different levels, I can't even begin to tell you. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you an opportunity to rectify this problem. We're going to cancel interviews for today, And we're going to give you an opportunity to try again tomorrow and the next day and the next day. In order to be a part of this organization that we're interviewing you for, there is a standard of excellence and greatness that is required for you to be a part of this team. And the way you are presenting today suggests to us that you are not interested in being a part of the team. Then I pulled certain individuals who were dressed appropriately, but whose resumes were trash, and said, might I do with this? You're dressed appropriately, but your presentation, how you're showing up on paper, does not depict how you're showing up in person. We need to bridge this gap. And I literally gave pointers to those individuals on how to critique and better prepare their resume so that how they were presenting in person is how they were presenting on paper. And what I had said to my boss at the time was, if we don't have this conversation, this developmental conversation, we are doing our people a disservice. We are perpetuating this cycle of mediocrity. We're perpetuating this just do enough to get by. And oh, by the way, Jay, guess what else? Folks showed up to the interview with their kids. The kids was running like it was the place. No, I swear for God is my witness. Kids was running around, and I have a theory about that. I ain't had no babysitter. You find a babysitter when you go into the club.
That's very true. Found quick club. Then on Saturday night, you got one for brunch.
Over to pay somebody $30 so you can go to the club to see the strippers. So you can go to the club, see the rump shakers.
Right.
But you didn't have a babysitter for the interview. So let me help the listeners and the viewers. If you can't get a babysitter for the interview, why would we think that you would be able to get a babysitter to come to work?
That's very true. So that's a sign right there that maybe once the job they may be calling out or showing up late. Other thing when you talk about resumes is sending an email. I think that's one of people have to focus on when you go into the professional realm. You have to be able to formulate an email. You have to know what to say, how to say it. Because a lot of times it get you in the door before you even talk to the person on the phone or face to face. So you have to know how to dialogue in an email as well. And it's so many players like that. I don't remember how I learned to use email. I think my mother probably taught me the way to formulate it. But in school, college, there wasn't anyone who really sat down and said, hey, this is what you're supposed to do step by step. This is what you do in the opening, body, the signature, any of that stuff. And that can cancel somebody out if they're trying to get a job on their resume or anything. And then also I think, so like the thing is with athletes, you're used to waking up early. You're used to having time management skills. You're used to constructive criticism. You're used to having to carry out tasks on a daily basis. But sometimes as athletes, let's say you go on an interview, you get a job, and then sometimes you still struggle in that profession, even though you're going through the same exact thing. But some guys are not in the limelight. You don't have that notoriety. You don't have that quote unquote campus or anything like that. I think sometimes athletes feel like now they're just a number in a sense, even though in some situations you may be in college. But I think that segues into going into other avenues. So you do get a job, but then also outside of that, maybe entrepreneurship, I believe, is something that a lot of athletes, most of athletes, can do fairly well in once they get a grasp of it. Because with football, you wake up every day, every single day is a fight. Every single day is a battle because you're not guaranteed anything. We already talked about before, you're not guaranteed the next year. Your position as a starter is on a day-to-day basis. One practice, and I've seen it, you could lose your starting spot and never play again for the rest of the season. And I've seen it happen so many. So you're waking up every day like, I have to do this. I have to be on my P's and Q's. But then when you get in the workforce, sometimes you kind of get lackadaisical and you fall back into, hey, I could just do the bare minimum and get by, or make it seem like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And I was in that role when I was working in D.C. We had to do laws and things like that. I mean, sometimes I would just write down stuff that I didn't even do. I was just doing the bare minimum just to get by, just so I get paid, weeks. But when you do entrepreneurship, that kind of brings back out that fight, that hunger, that quote-unquote dog in the athlete, where you're waking up and you're creating something and I have to do this because I'm not going to get paid if I don't make this sale, sales or anything like that. I think that's something that gives athletes that sense of pride, that sense of importance. It makes them have a sense of valueness and purpose because it relates to the football field. It's just a different realm. But I think that's something that a lot of former student athletes that are at a high level should consider doing something in that nature. And you don't have to do it full time. You start off slow, still, have your career that you want to go into. Maybe you're going into your major. But I think that's something that life, if you are missing, that in your life now post-athletics.
There's three things that I want us to touch on that came up while you were talking. My brain is like always spinning.
Right.
I wanted to circle back real quick to when you were talking about emails, and I wanted to stress the importance that as someone that's sourcing and screening and hiring, I don't want to get an email from QD on duty. I don't want to get an email from hung like a horse, at Gmail. Your email addresses have to be professional. You can have those, those email addresses that speak to your nickname or what you do or don't do or how good you are, whatever you do. You can have those for your private server. For your professional email, it needs to be professional. It needs to be your name at whatever you are, or the name of your business at whatever the business is, but it has to be something professional so that every ounce of contact that someone has with you, they know that they are dealing with a professional. The other thing that I wanted to point out, Jay, and I'm hoping that you can sort of illuminate this for our viewers and our listeners, is there are some top skills and characteristics that we're looking for in good employees. And one of the things, research shows in the sector that many, many, many employers are struggling because candidates are coming to them and just do not have the appropriate skill set that they need in order to be able to employ them. And that speaks to the family initiative that HSRN is doing in making sure that we are effectively bridging this gap and making sure that our student athletes and others have the appropriate skill set that they need. So the characteristics and skills that we're looking for in a good employee are knowing the why as well as the what. So in other words, knowing why you're doing what you're doing and know what you're doing. So don't just come to a job just because you need a job. Or why? Why are you coming for this particular job beyond, I want a paycheck? And what are you doing? Professionalism, honesty and integrity, innovative ideas, problem-solving abilities, ambitious, dependability, reliability, and responsibility, conflict resolution skills, leadership skills, organizational skills, excellent written and verbal communication, and I'm going to come back to that in a second, Jay.
Right.
Intelligence, active listening skills, honesty, ambition, and a strong work ethic. I want to take just a couple of minutes and put emphasis on excellent written and verbal communication. Jay, that is Dr. Pitts' pet peeve. I cannot stand it. Jay, it reminds me of, I remember Andre's dad and his friends and my former husband and their friends and how they used to always talk about how it would drive them crazy when an athlete would have a microphone shoved in their face and they couldn't speak correctly. It would grate on their nerves because they were both very, very well spoken. So what in the world What, Jay? What? Why?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why is it so hard for some of our student athletes to communicate in excellent fashion, both in written and verbal form? Help me to understand that, because it drives me nuts.
Your communication skills on the field or on the court, I mean, they'll be impeccable. Like you can understand signals. You can say something in 5 seconds and describe it, like so exact and in detail. But then once you get behind a microphone, there's no training behind it. It starts in the house or what you're watching on TV or what you're listening to, not listening to people on a daily basis that are talking in an educated way, a.k.a. white, you know. And I saw an ad last week on TV, on Instagram, and he was talking, and I could not understand a word he said. And he was a top athlete. I could not understand a word he said, and it made me want to just stop listening, thinking, okay, that's cool. You know, you go to a combine and you talk like that. It's not going to be detrimental and say, oh, we're going to drop him in the draft. He's not going to be a top 5 pick. But once you get in front of a corporation, a boss, a CEO, that's going to be very pivotal and a determining factor, because what if your job, you have to communicate on a daily basis with customers? That business is going to look at you and say you're not an asset, you're a liability, because when somebody comes in contact with you, you're not going to be able to relay our message, you're not going to be able to close a deal, sale, so you're out of the door. And I think one thing every athlete should do is take a public speaking class. I took 2 college public speaking, and that's where I learned how to talk in front of a group, because the class was huge. So every single week you're having to get in front of them and talk. You're having to do presentations. You're having to talk about your life, your experiences, and they tell you how to scan the room, make eye contact, talk at a certain level, know when to talk at a certain level and when to chime it down a little bit, knowing how to have people engage people in your conversation as well. And I think that that's something that can help. You're at school, you're on scholarship. The class is free. Take as many public speaking classes as you can. Go to speaking. Another thing that the Masters Commission, my stepdad goes there, and what they do, you're forced to talk in front of people. You present things in front of other men and women, you know, adult age. You have to communicate. And some people go up there and they're not good, but they progress. I think it comes back to it's not important. Because when you look at what do you have to do to be successful on the field, you have to play football. You don't have to talk, anything like that. The person who's doing the talking is a quarterback. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, it's not important, and I don't think I don't know what it would take for somebody to sit down and say, hey, we're going to go over your public speaking skills, your communications as much as we do the talent. And I don't know if that will ever change. I don't know what it will take to change, but I think that you have to start looking at other people. If you're not seeing in your home, look at Barack Obama, African-American man. See him speak. He speaks eloquently. When you look at Kamala Harris, she speaks well, educated. They don't sound white to me. They sound like they know what they're talking about. And I think that's the
It's not about being white. It's about being educated. It's about being able to pronunciate, enunciate, and articulate. Look, all the 8s. It's about being able to communicate effectively, and communicating effectively should not be associated with the color of one's skin. Communicating effectively should be associated with one's ability to communicate effectively despite the color of one's skin. Something else that I wanted to point out too, Jay, that I think is real crucial is when I was, we're always researching for our shows, and I was looking comparatively at the skills and characteristics that I stated that are representative of a good employee. Here's the contrast, if you will, of the characteristics that elite athletes should exhibit as unique and strong traits: self-confidence, motivation, self-discipline, optimism, acceptance of criticism, poise under stress, focus, resiliency, competitive spirit, natural leadership, humility, passion. Great athletes display countless traits that together make them successful in their sport and off of the field. I think that it is crucial, and you said something else, and I'm going to use this as a segue. You were talking briefly about entrepreneurship and keeping in mind characteristics that I shared for good employees and the characteristics that are necessary for elite athletes. I pulled a list of athletes that are standout entrepreneurs. Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, George Foreman, Shaquille O'Neal, Venus Williams, Tony Hawk, Wayne Gretzky. Every single solitary last one of those athletes had, in Kobe's case, had and have the parallel traits of both lanes as far as characteristics and traits. They're elite business people, but they're also elite athletes. And I think that it's imperative for our viewers and our listeners to get that, to let that be ingrained.
Yeah. Because I think, when you look at Enterprise, you probably heard they specifically go after college athletes. That's their number one pool for employees. And they do it because of all those, I saw those traits as well, like time management, the mental aspect, being able to work as a team. You go to a company where you're having to complete assignments as a team. You have to do, like in football, you do your 1-11. Everybody does their job, and you'll be fine. So these attributes, they contribute into the professional realm. I think another thing people have to also be able to do, especially athletes transitioning to the professional realm, is you have to be able to be diverse in your conversation and what you're talking about, topics that you talk about. Because you're coming from a place where everyone is talking about the same thing. You're in college, you're talking about football, you're talking about girls, you're talking about music. You're playing video games. That's the reality of it. That's a place where you're 23 years old and you have a 50-year-old that you're working with on a daily basis. You have to be able to communicate. Not saying that everything has to be serious, but you have to know how to talk to people outside of your group of friends, your circle, or your coach and things like that. And I have a friend, he ran track in college. He was teaching at one point, and about him, and there was very few black men at this school. And he would notice one of his colleagues was African American, would talk to white people in a professional realm, talk about the job, but every time he came to him to speak, it was sports. You see the game, you see this, you see that. And he was, is it because I'm black that you feel you can talk to me, unprofessionally while we're on the job? And he was taken aback by it and kind of offended and saying, as African Americans, we don't have to look at our counterparts, our anyone that looks like us and, degrade the conversation. You have to keep that level of excellence at all times. And people, like you said, say code switching, things like that. Sometimes you might have to. Sometimes you might have to change the way you talk. And I think it'll get you to a certain level. Or if you don't want to change the way you talk and you want to do what you want to do, learn about building a business or a company where you can do whatever you want to do. If you're somebody who's like, I don't want to learn how to do, but at the end of the day, you still have to communicate. You're still going to have to communicate if you can be successful. All those names that you listed off, LeBron James, he has to speak. Kobe Bryant was speaking all the time.
All the time. And spoke well.
You know what I mean? Exactly. So I think finding new role models in your life and watching how they talk. It might sound weird. You're watching a YouTube video to see how they pronounce their words, but that's what you should do. Reading different books is help you open up your vocabulary. If you come across a word that you don't know, then look it up, write it down, jot it down. One thing I do is, it's a dictionary. It's not dictionary.com. It's another guy I came across on YouTube, but on a weekly basis, it sends you words, and the words I've never heard of, but it defines them.
Word genius.
Yeah, something
Word,
like that.
Word genius.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. I use Word Genius, and I've been using it for years. Yep. Word Genius will help you to expand your vocabulary. It's a beaut.
Exactly, because you have to think, as an athlete, it may sound weird, but you've done it before. Everything that you're doing in the professional realm, you've done it before, but you have to look at it from a different perspective. Because when you're learning plays, especially on the football field, you're learning hundreds of plays. You have to take that process and be able to communicate it effectively to your teammates. As a quarterback, I had to learn to communicate effectively. And another thing I want people to think about when we're talking about communicating with your colleagues in the professional realm, the way I talk to my wide receiver, I had to talk to him a certain way. When I talk to my left tackle, who's protecting me when I can't see because I'm right-handed, I have to talk to him a certain way. I have to be able to encourage him a certain way. Sometimes in the professional, if you get to a point where you're overseeing people, you can't talk to everyone the same way. You can't degrade that one female because they may not respond to that effectively. And if I talk to my left tackle and I know he's somebody who's kind of, shy, maybe comes from a background where he was talked to in a negative way, and I know that, I can't talk to him like that. That's going to cause him to not increase his performance level. And then you may have somebody else who likes that type of communication where you get on them and you really dig into them, and that takes them to the peak level. So you have to learn about who you're working with, learn what are they like, take time to spend time with them, and then that's going to also help your communication.
Right. What you're speaking to, Jared, is people being able to perfect their communication skills with the internal customer and the external customer. And what I mean by that is the internal customer are those with whom you work. They're the people that are in your office or on your team or in your department or a part of your organization within that organization's hierarchy, right? But then externally, depending on the nature of your work, to your point, Jared, even if you're in business for yourself, you still have to be able to communicate effectively with other people to grow your business. You're not living life in a bubble, and you have to be able to communicate effectively. I want to challenge our listeners and our viewers to get out of this mindset that communicating effectively somehow makes you less black or less brown. Not being able to communicate effectively makes you more ignorant. And I need people to understand that. And I know that I say that really harsh, but the reality of it is that if you don't learn how to communicate effectively, if you cannot learn how to hold your own in the boardroom, so to speak, and on the block, on the field or the court or whatever your sport is, there's going to be a breakdown that is going to compromise the level of success that you're able to achieve. And we want you to be as successful as you possibly can. And believe it or not, your success in part is grounded in how effectively you are able to communicate. So one of the things that comes to the forefront here, when I think about, you were talking about athletes that, they whether they're in sports or not. So let's take a look for a quick second at some of the careers that are actually within the sports field, right? Sports statistical analysts, sports agents, had one of those on last week. Careers in sports medicine, event coordinator, sports media positions, sports marketing, facility operations manager, athletic directors, coaches, assistant coaches, athletic trainers, umpires and referees, sports announcers, fitness center careers. Every single last one of those requires effective communication. And if you're not able to communicate effectively in verbal and written form, that is going to create problems that affect adversely one's ability to be successful. The other thing that I want to add, and this is a tip, it's a freebie. Dr. Pitt's not going to charge you for this one. Jared, I think that it's imperative for people to understand that you shouldn't be the smartest person in the room.
Yeah.
If you're always the smartest person in the room, how are you learning? You need to be willing to challenge yourself. Put on your big boy boxers, put on your big girl panties, and step outside of your comfort zone and start deliberately and intentionally networking and net connecting in environments that you're uncomfortable in. Right. Surround yourself on purpose with people who know you and have a greater skill set than what you have. Be deliberate and intentional in surrounding yourself with people that are already at a level of success that you aspire to achieve. Stop being afraid. Stop being afraid to be around people that are different than you. Go ahead, Jay.
Because, and again, it's funny because it all relates back to athletics. If you're talking to an athlete, when you were 6 years old, you started sport. All the way up until you finished, 9 times out of 10, you were getting instruction from somebody who knew more than you. Your coach always knew more than you. And if you think about it, that's what helped you progress to high school, to get a scholarship to college, to play professionally. You were surrounded by individuals who knew more than you, who were smarter than you. And that's what propelled you to a high level. So you take that same attitude into the work environment, entrepreneurial business environment. It's the same thing, but you just have to get your mind out of that tunnel vision of football. I got to look at it, this way. And also constructive criticism in the workspace, I think, is something that is very vital because you constructively criticize 9 times out of 10 every single day in practice. You're going to make a mistake. You're going to do something. Respond to it. Athletes respond to it well. Some don't, though. And same thing. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to turn in, a project, and there's going to be issues with it. And when they tell you something's wrong, you can't get down, you can't act to them, you're going to lose your job. Right. Sometimes in football, it's a lot more emotions involved. In the middle of a game, you see players on the sideline slam their helmet down. You see them yelling at a teammate, at a coach. They go back on the field. Everything is fine. But when you're in a professional realm, you cannot get face-to-face with your employer. You're going to have a lot more chances. They may give you one chance, but after that, it's a, you know what I'm saying? So I think still finding ways to fine-tune how you deal with constructive criticism is going to help a lot in the professional sector as well. I think that's very important.
Jay, what do you think about student athletes at the high school level and at the collegiate level, particularly for those that aspire to go into the league, whether it be football, basketball, baseball, whatever league they aspire to? What do you think about them purposefully pursuing a mentor-mentee relationship? What do you think about student athletes having mentors?
I think that's big. And having a mentor that maybe played football with you, and then having somebody who not play with you, but play football, and then having a mentor who is in the professional realm already, very seasoned. I think that's something that's going to help, because a lot of times, you may not be in a household where the person that you look up to is doing what you want to do, is in your career field. So finding a mentor is pivotal. And I also think once you get to a point where you can have somebody that you can mentor to, and you're no longer a mentee, but you can mentor to somebody, I think it's something that helps keep you, at the top of your game, because now you have somebody at you, and they're watching everything you do. If you make a mistake, if you don't wake up in the morning, if you're late to a meeting, if you do those things, it's not just you, so you have to answer to somebody else. So I think finding that is another way in the professional realm to keep you on top of your game. Because just like in sports, you got a backup behind you. You have to make sure you're on your people that are going to take your spot. You have to look at that mentee as a backup. You have somebody that's relying on you to show, for you to show them the way. So I think that's important. And I believe I said it before, but when you find a mentor, especially when you transition, you don't have to be on them playing a sport. They can be totally different, but like you said, not being the smartest person in the room. You're going to have to find somebody who knows what they're talking about and is willing to help and encourage you. And I think that's a setup for success. Even if you don't reach their exact level, you're going to reach a higher level than you would mentor.
Right. It reminded me of, and I think, quote me if I'm wrong, Jay, or correct me, excuse me if I'm wrong, but at Kobe's funeral, didn't Michael Jordan comment on that when he was speaking, how Kobe used to call him all hours of the day and night? And at one point he was like, yo, he is a pest. But then he got to the point where he was like, wait a minute. He's pestering me, so to speak, because I have value to add to him that he needs. And I get full just thinking about that moment, because when you look at the level of greatness that Kobe achieved coming from Philly and what Jordan is still doing, and you look at, we talked about role models and all of that last week, how important is it that these two greats, these two icons, saw the value in the mentor-mentee relationship that truly enhanced both of their lives beyond measure, and that created this space for a level of greatness that I would be as bold to say that neither one of them had ever imagined in a million years. I mean, they knew that they wanted to be great. They knew that they wanted to be extraordinary. But to the level that they did, to have the global impact that they, Kobe's gone, but his legacy is still impacting us for generations to come. I think I think that it's so important for our student athletes to know that. And as we're wrapping up with just a couple of minutes left, I think that it's important to emphasize on parents that are listening. I think that oftentimes, Jay, not oftentimes, I think all the time, children are products of their environment to a degree. And when we see parents that are fearful and apprehensive and carrying that ill toward the dominant culture and viewing, conducting oneself a certain way as acting white or being white, or thinking that you're better than, I think that it's disheartening, and I think that it's unfair, and that it's stifling the growth of the student athlete. So my challenge to everyone as we close is this: don't be afraid to pursue more and different and better than what you've seen going on around you every day. Aspire for greatness and excellence, and get around people that have achieved levels of success. Get a mentor. Be deliberate and intentional in aligning yourself with those who can add value to you that surpasses the example that you see every day in some instances. It doesn't mean you think that you're better than anybody. It doesn't mean that you're bougie. It doesn't mean that you're looking down on people. It just means that you aspire for a level of greatness that surpasses that which you've seen. So until next week, we thank you for tuning in and viewing us. Tune in next week to House Talk Pregame with Dr. Lauren Pitts. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.